Views and opinions expressed by hosts and guests on Patriots with Grit do not necessarily reflect those of Patriots with Grit LLC, its founders, and owners.
Get ready for truth bombs and guidance from conservative leaders and entrepreneurs from God-fearing, freedom-loving, truth-telling, patriotic Americans. Welcome to Patriots with Grit. Now let's jump into today's episode with your host, Darren Ross.
On today's show, we have one of the best journalists in America joining us, Naomi Wolf. She's a graduate of Yale, an author and a professor, and she breaks open the Pfizer papers.
And you'll see just how much they knew about the ineffectiveness and danger of this vaccine.
Here we go.
I'm excited to announce that we're having our first ever mega sale on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save over 50% on this season's flannel sheets. Queen size only $59.98. Kings only $69.98. They sell out fast every year, so order now. Save 20% on our brand new My Crosses. They're designed in the likeness of the one I've worn every day for over 20 years. They come in men's and women's, and they're made right here in the USA. Get our 2025 six-piece My Towel sets for only $29.98. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, just $14.98. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our first ever mega sale. But wait, remember that $75 free shipping rule? Well, that ship is sale because right now, every order ships absolutely free.
Well, Naomi Wolf, it's an honor to have you on here with Patriots with Grit. We've followed your story for, I'd say, Randy? The last couple of years, we've had several people say that she's a great guest and had a lot of people recommend we get her on. We finally were able to work with someone to help get her scheduled on here. Naomi, you were deplatformed from Facebook, YouTube, Twitter a long time ago, I think back in 21, 22, and you were kind of on the other side of the fence for a long time. You were an advisor, I believe, to the Clinton and Gore campaigns. You're noted as one of the best journalists around. And I checked you out today on Wikipedia, and when they said you're a conspiracy theorist, I knew that you were our people. So I knew that you were a truth teller when they said that. So we want to have you come on and talk about everything that you've done over the last 2 or 3 years. I know you just released an incredible book called The Pfizer Papers. We were digging into that earlier today. I told Randy, I said, I watched a 40-minute video with you and Del Bigtree. I told Randy, I said, this is probably the most informative video I've seen in 5 years on COVID, and we've watched probably, hundreds of hours of research and data. So talk to our viewers and our guests a little bit about what you're doing, what got you to this point, and what all is in the new book that you just released called The Pfizer Papers.
Sure. Well, what got me to this point? It is true that my whole life until 2021, I was a Democrat, and I advised the Clinton's reelection campaign in '96, and I advised Vice President Gore as a political consultant in 2000 for his presidential run. And my then husband was a White House speechwriter for the Clintons, and I just was a Dem, And then I was also a well-known writer about women's issues and civil liberties. And then in June of 2021, I accurately reported that women were sustaining menstrual injuries or damage to their menstrual cycles when they received the mRNA injection. And this is work I've done my whole career, reporting on women's health issues, women's sexual and reproductive health. It's not a new subject for me. So I accurately reported that women were saying this about their own bodies, right? And I was immediately deplatformed from Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. But not only that, as you saw with Wikipedia, my bio changed overnight worldwide from, best-selling author, Rhodes Scholar, advisor to president and vice president, to conspiracy theorist. And I didn't even understand how that was possible because we didn't know about AI then, but clearly AI was already in use. But
that in the dictionary will now mean truth teller.
Right. It's become a badge of honor. You're quite right. But at the time, it was no joke because my career was over, and legacy media, where I'd been a commentator for 4 decades, wouldn't have me, and I couldn't write anywhere I'd been writing my whole life, and no one in legacy media would talk to me. The people who would talk to me were conservatives and libertarians, and Steve Bannon specifically had me on his show and featured me regularly. So when the successful lawsuit by attorney Aaron Siri against the FDA in 2022 resulted in the release of 450,000 internal documents, Pfizer's internal documents, that the court had forced the FDA to make public, even though the FDA asked the court to let them keep the documents hidden for 75 years, right?
In hopes that we'd all be dead.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Uh, Bannon and I both realized this is a real problem because no news outlet had the bandwidth to go through all of these. And also, they're written in very technical language that's difficult for a layperson to understand. So he had the idea live on his show that I should crowdsource, reading through these documents and issuing reports calling for scientists and doctors. And I said yes, because you don't say no to Steve Bannon
Right.
when he asks for something that useful to humanity. And so we put the call out, and I was joined by an amazing woman named Amy Kelly, who's now my COO, who is an incredible project manager, and she became the program director. So basically, she organized what are now 3,250 doctors and scientists into 6 working groups, and they've produced 109 reports based on these voluminous records. And unfortunately now, and they've been published now in the Pfizer papers and in an earlier volume that we self-published, it was a bestseller. And now, unfortunately, what you've got in this book is documentation of the greatest crime against humanity in recorded history. I say that advisedly as the granddaughter of a woman who lost 8 siblings and cousins to the Holocaust. It's just statistically worse than the Holocaust because, 3/4 of the planet got injected with this material. But I will pause in a moment, but I'll just say among the horrors in the Pfizer papers, the centerpiece of the Pfizer papers is an attack on human reproduction.
Well, I think in the research I was doing earlier today, Naomi, it said somewhere between 13 and 20% decrease in live births. Is that correct?
That's right. Igor Chudov, a mathematician, went through government databases and found a 13 to 20% drop in live births, not worldwide, but in the West. So this is definitely an attack on the West. And that correlates or corresponds with what we found in the 42,000 plus serious adverse events in just 3 months, which is what the Pfizer papers covers, the months of the rollout of the vaccine from November 2020 to February of 2021. Over the overwhelming top country for sustaining serious adverse events, meaning injuries or deaths, is the United States. And after that, it is Western Europe in order of political importance, like Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Greece, and all the rest of the world combined. 52 other countries add up to only 7,000 serious adverse events. So it's a targeted attack, and I can tell you, how they do it, but it's very easy to manipulate the lethality of the injection through things as simple as brand, with Moderna having 3 times the kind of toxic adverse ingredients as Pfizer, although Pfizer has SV40, which is a carcinogen.
That's that simian virus.
Correct. And other ways to manipulate its lethality, like storage. I'll just add one more data point, which is my original research found that the vaccine, the IP, got transferred to China in 2021, according to the SEC filing for BioNTech, which is Pfizer's subsidiary, which makes the vaccine. And that means that our existential adversary is producing, manufacturing, packaging, distributing this injection with 11 distribution points in Western Europe and 14 now in the United States. And they want us gone. They want us gone. So it is definitely an attack on the American population.
So in your research and with all the doctors, did you find any documented correlation between the DoD?
So I wasn't looking, how can I put it? A lot of people like Sasha Latipova, who's a very good researcher, are kind of upset because our work doesn't kind of conclude that the DoD is behind this. And that doesn't mean they're not. It just means that we are strictly looking at these documents and only only producing to the world information that's in these documents. And these documents, the whole commission was a contract with DoD, but my husband, who's a veteran and spent his career in military intelligence, points out that all vaccine contracts are with the government, are with the DoD. So that may or may not be particularly nefarious. I just don't know. Okay. But other people, have looked more deeply into that.
Naomi, I was researching a little bit today before we had you on, and I believe in another video I saw with you and Del Bigtree, you had made reference to when we talked about adverse effects a while ago, that at one point Pfizer had reportedly hired 2,400 employees just to document the adverse effect. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So obviously they knew it wasn't working in the effects.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with that. A month into the rollout, 1 month, Pfizer concluded that the vaccine didn't work to stop COVID. The language Pfizer uses is failure of efficacy and vaccine failure. And in fact, in the side effects, the number one side effect is myalgia, which is muscle pain, which is interesting. You think about people who just don't feel good anymore. Well, muscle pain is just a horrible quality of life issue. The next one is joint pain or arthritis type injury, and think about people who are limping or had knee replacements, hip replacements, tendon snapping, shoulder issues. Joint pain is the number two, and that's because these lipid nanoparticles are inflammatory. The number three side effect is COVID. And in fact, right? So think about all the mandates, all the lost jobs, all the people fired, the soldiers, the sailors, the healthcare workers, all the yelling that President Biden did at those of us who are unvaccinated, the whole hellish mess, all the deaths, all the injuries, all the sterilization was based on a lie from the start, because this injection doesn't help you in any way avoid COVID. And Pfizer concluded that. I'll go further. One of the key findings of Dr. Gianthi Kunadasan from the Pfizer paper, she's one of our experts. She's an anesthesiologist in Australia. She found that Pfizer hid the bodies, essentially, of 8 vaccinated people who died with COVID. In other words, they didn't report the deaths to the FDA, which they're legally obligated to, until after they got the emergency use authorization. And what that did, by not counting those 8 dead people, only thus were they able to claim that you're more likely to be hospitalized or die with COVID if you're unvaccinated. If they had correctly reported the deaths of those 8 vaccinated people, they would have had to tell all of us what other studies are now proven to be true, which is you're more likely to be hospitalized or die if you're vaccinated.
Well, so it stands to reason. The people that have been stuck with that thing 6 times have probably had COVID 8 times. It's the correlation, and people don't see it. One of the things that I think you'd mentioned in your book, that there was a group of people that went in and trained the White House staff on how to lie about this thing.
Oh, sort of. I think you're referring to a FOIA meaning Freedom of Information
Okay.
Act request by one of our lawyers. I think it was Jim Ostrowski, but I may be wrong there. Yes, it was Jim Ostrowski. And he FOIA'd from the CDC every mention of the word myocarditis. And he got a big chunk of material back, which actually so big that it suggests that there was a whistleblower in the CDC. But in this document release, what you see in April of 2021 is that the CDC had been alerted by the Israeli Ministry of Health and also by a pediatricians organization that minors were suffering heart damage, myocarditis and pericarditis from the mRNA injection. And instead of stopping everything and telling parents and finding out more, what you see is a scramble, a mad scramble with all of the top names CC'd, like on the email chain. Dr. Fauci, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the head of HHS, and 15 White House staffers. And there's also a template to raise the information or the email communication to the level of POTUS. So President Biden himself may have been on that email chain. It's structured, and I recognize this as a former political consultant, so that he has deniability, but it could have gone all the way to the top. It certainly was 15 people in the White House, right? And they were all freaking out, trying to figure out a way to cover up this information, not to disclose it. And so they came up with they had kind of an emergency PR, huddle, and they came up with a 17-page script, which they used to downplay the risk. You remember 2021, we were all being told all summer and fall, yes, myocarditis exists, but it's rare and mild and transient, all of which is a lie. It's a life-threatening, lifelong condition. It can kill you. But that script is 100% redacted. And one of the exciting things about today is, we're that much closer maybe to RFK Jr. being confirmed. But either way, Senator Johnson said he's going to ask to unredact that script.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Cardio miracle to me is hope in a glass. When you create nitric oxide, you are igniting the spark of life in the cell. It is the miracle molecule. That's why we called this cardio miracle, because of nitric oxide and what it can do for the whole body.
Overall, there's a lot we could really dig into, but overall, you found out what was the center of this whole process and what you found in the paperwork. Was it about preventing COVID, or was it something else that was more centered on?
Well, it's totally centered on preventing babies.
Right.
There's no better way to say that. First, I don't want to skip over the truly shocking side effects. So, I mentioned some of them, not even the most serious, but you've got a picture in the Pfizer papers, industrial scale, like thousands and thousands and thousands of strokes, heart attacks, blood clots, lung clots, leg clots, myocarditis, pericarditis, dementias, neurological conditions of every kind, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré, epilepsies,
myelin delamination.
Exactly. And we actually broke that story. Dr. Chris Flowers, I asked him to look at what the lipid nanoparticles were they changing people, because I'd been noticing really weird personality changes in people all around me who had been vaccinated. And he found that, sadly, yes, lipid nanoparticles are designed to traverse every membrane in the human body. They're like, Dr. Robert Chandler, one of our experts, said it's like a gunshot wound, gunshot pellets throughout the body. It just goes throughout biodistributes throughout the whole body, and degrades tissue, basically. And so the nervous system is encased in a myelin sheath, as you rightly mentioned, and lipid nanoparticles degrade that myelin sheath, so it makes nerve conduction impaired, right? And so that's why you're getting all of these crazy neurological symptoms, but also personality changes. This stuff is crossing the blood-brain barrier. It's damaging the prefrontal cortex.
Wow.
Like, think about people you know who they used to be able to have a calm conversation about issues that, with which they might not agree, and now they can't do it anymore, right? There's that binary thinking, black and white thinking, or they storm out of the room, or they lose their temper, crazy driving, right? Explosiveness. That's all damage to the prefrontal cortex, because the prefrontal cortex is what lets you engage in critical thinking and also moderate your impulses. So that's all tragic. But also, I mean, I could go on and on. The injuries are so severe. Liver damage, and in our liver damage report, half of the people with liver damage sustained it within 48 hours of getting the injection. Like, there's a real smoking gun there chronologically. Same with the stroke report. Many people got it right, had strokes right after getting the injection. Kidney damage, skin damage of all kinds, eye problems, eye damage. Actually, ophthalmologists are saying they can tell who's vaccinated just by looking at his eyes because of the nature of the eye damage. But in addition to all of these horrific side effects, and also let's not forget 1,223 deaths in just 3 months. And these are just the deaths that the doctors who knew about the vaccination and then their patient died phoned it in, right? Reported it to Pfizer. So it's vastly underreporting the deaths. Probably.
Well, and then of course the VAERS was underutilized.
But I want to jump in here.
VAERS is, I want to make it clear that VAERS is a different data set.
Oh, okay. All right.
But just to finish the riff I was on, if you don't mind, the centerpiece of everything is this 360-degree attack on human reproduction. And I can go into detail if you like, but go ahead. You were going to ask me.
That's where I was going. When I was doing the research earlier today, I'd seen some parts in the video clips where you were talking about damage to fetuses, talking about damage to pregnant moms. Let's kind of get into that topic, because I know that's a huge issue. And you had said earlier, I believe in that video, that really the whole agenda is a depopulation agenda, which is probably what got you the conspiracy theorist label. But so be it.
No, I was called a conspiracy theorist from the minute I reported that women were having problems.
Okay. Well, let's dig into the women and the pregnant women and the moms and the fetal issues, because that is, in my opinion, extremely, extremely concerning.
Yeah, you're right. The future of our species is in the balance, really. So, when I say 360-degree damage, I really mean it. Like, they studied every single aspect of human reproduction and ruined every single aspect. So, I mean, you need to start with an egg being released from a fallopian tube. Well, the lipid nanoparticles accumulate in the ovaries, and they block the ovaries. Nurses are reporting that childbearing age women having abdominal surgeries now, not even related to the ovaries, they see the blocked ovaries. So that could explain some of the menstrual damage women are reporting. Then the lipid nanoparticles traverse, as I mentioned, every membrane. Well, the placenta is a membrane. So Dr. Thorpe showed me, he's a fetal maternal medicine specialist, like the only one who's been speaking out, except for maybe two others. He showed me sonograms showing like nettings of calcifications in the placenta that restrict the placenta from growing and that keep oxygen and nutrients from reaching the fetus. And independent midwives, two of them independently confirmed to me, and more are coming forward, saying that in fact they're having to deliver mothers with babies prematurely because the placentas don't grow to their what should be their full size. And midwives are even sending me pictures of vaccinated women's placentas, and they don't look anything like healthy unvaccinated women's placentas. I mean, I don't need to go into horrible detail, but they're not fit to house a baby for 9 months and grow it to term. Maternal death is up 40% because these impaired placentas hemorrhage, so women are bleeding. They give birth. the babies are being born with chromosomal abnormalities, and other abnormalities that Dr. Thorpe has itemized. But we've seen this also independently. We looked at the records of one province, Alberta, Canada, and we saw, horrible problems with childbirth and dead babies. I mean, there's a section in the Pfizer papers where vaccinated men are told not to have intercourse with unvaccinated women, and if they do, to use two reliable forms of contraception. So there's something, this is a very depressing thing to share, but there's something in the semen of vaccinated men that to this day Pfizer isn't disclosing, that they're worried about harming women or harming the fetus. They told women not to get pregnant. Nonetheless, 270 of them did get pregnant. Pfizer lost the records of 234 of them, which is illegal. The 36 women whose pregnancies were followed to term, over 80% of them lost their babies.
Wow.
But are they still pushing this for pregnant women?
To this day.
See, I don't know how that they can still put this stuff out on the radio and the TV, that this is a viable thing. I think you mentioned that, what's his name, the biological researcher for the FDA saw the adverse effects and still claims it to be safe and effective.
It's insanity. I mean, attorneys general who are looking at, suing Pfizer are specifically looking at what you just described, which is false advertising and fraud. It's fraud to say that this is safe and effective. No, but to this day, it's absolutely insane. I could go on. I mean, you should know that an 8-page pregnancy and lactation report was sent to, again in April 2021, April 20th, to the White House and to Dr. Walensky. 2 babies died in utero in the report, and Pfizer concluded that their deaths were due to, quote, maternal exposure to the vaccine, end quote. This was in the report. Like, it was like, this is what this injection does. It's like they were proud of it almost. And there was a chart in that report of sick babies, thousands of babies, this many babies vomiting, this many babies chills and fever, this many babies convulsions, this many babies failure to survive, all due to nursing from vaccinated moms, because the materials, spike protein, lipid nanoparticles, mRNA, are getting into the breast milk of vaccinated moms. Since these poor babies are ingesting this, polyethylene glycol, which is a petroleum byproduct. They're getting sick from nursing vaccinated moms.
Will that affect them for the rest of their life, or was that just a temporary thing?
Well, we know that some things are already affecting the babies. For instance, the lipid nanoparticles degrade the membranes around the testes of baby boys in utero, thus impairing the Sertoli cells and Leydig cells, which turn on masculinity at adolescence, like adult masculinity, like deep voices, facial hair, broad shoulders, the ability to father a child. So we don't know if these baby boys, even if they're not vaccinated, if their moms were, we don't know if they'll grow up to be normal men.
Oh my gosh, that kind of fits into the agenda too.
It sure does. In terms of the nursing, that's a really important question. It's a whole other subject, but nursing went from 34% of moms and babies to 14%, understandably, after 2021, because the breast milk got poisoned. So you get immunities from your mom's breast milk if you're a nursing baby. And so obviously kids are not getting that now. But also, I think even more serious is the psychological impairment, because babies are going to be associating their mother's bodies with, like, making them sick, instead of that primal experience that all babies should have of, the mother being able to nurture and sustain the baby.
I've just never heard of such a thing.
Not that I'm questioning what you're saying. I'm just saying there's more supporting evidence out there Well, when did we have the whistleblower gal from California on? She was an OB nurse, and
Michelle Spencer.
I think she gave the same statistics, about 20% what she was seeing in this major California hospital as far as live births, the decrease in live births. So that was 2 years ago. Yep. And then you mentioned the neurological disorders, the fibromyalgia type pain, are one of our best guests as far as being a friend. Her name was Danielle Baker. She was the coerced nurse that was forced to get the vaccine. She has spinal delamination. And it's caused, it is.
And she's the only one I think I've ever had tears on our show here. She shakes when she talks. She's confined to her bedroom.
It's like Parkinson's.
It's just has a young son, probably 10 or 12 years old. It's probably the most, out of 400, 500 episodes we've done, Naomi, it's probably the most gut-wrenching, horrible. That was a tough one to do.
Yeah. And just hearing from one show to the next, I don't know how far apart they were, but she had gotten worse. Now, the last time we had her on a third time, she seemed to be getting a little bit better through some alternative treatments. But as far as I know, you can't really heal delamination.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot.
Naomi, talk real quick about your book and where people can get that, and what they can expect to find in that treasure trove of research that you and your team did.
Well, you can order it on Amazon, and it's actually best for us if you do, even though we have no doubt mixed feelings about Amazon, because that sends a signal to bookstores to order it as well. So it's the Pfizer papers, and you can order it there. If you can't afford to order it, you can ask your library to order it. Your library has to order it for you, or you can look at the reports for free on dailyclout.io. But if you can afford to, please give us a donation on dailyclout.io, because we tried to, make this information available to everyone, but it's definitely an expensive undertaking. And what you can expect to find, well, more on what I just shared with you, but it's an incredible resource because everybody's family has people who are suffering now, unfortunately. And whatever your loved ones are dealing with, or whatever you're dealing with, you're likely to find an explanation in the Pfizer paper.
I have to know this, Naomi, because I'm kind of like a numbers or a data guy. How long was it from the time you woke up one day and said, I'm going to publish the Pfizer papers, and I'm going to rally around 3,200 doctors and physicians to help bring this together and go through thousands and tens of thousands of documents? How long was it till you had the idea until it was actually up and live on a bookstore?
Well, Steve Bannon, I think, started this process in maybe late 2022, and early 2023, it was well underway. It's now 2024. I would say it was 2 years, start to finish.
Perfect.
That seems pretty quick. I mean, that's a lot of work in 2 years.
Well, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
It was these 3,250 doctors and scientists, but it's heroic. I mean, they've really saved humanity, because the uptake of the booster is down to like single digits, like 1%, I think.
Right.
And pregnant women are not touching it. I think
Great.
Again, for pregnant women, overwhelmingly, and it's all due to these people who volunteered their time and had their expertise and did it for the love of humanity and real science.
So what's your next big project?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know. I figured you'd have to have something to keep busy.
No, I'm supposed to be writing my autobiography, actually, but so much gets in the way. But my agent.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Naomi, thanks for coming over to the right side. We appreciate you making that move, and thanks for sharing truth with the world, because it definitely is brought to light. So few people are willing to do what you did, and I think so many people's eyes have been opened because of what you and these hero doctors have done with the Pfizer papers. So I just want to say thank you. People can find you over at dailyclout.io, dailyclout.io. That's where you have all your information. And if you would go to Amazon and get her book, The Pfizer Papers. Thanks for coming on here, Naomi. Please keep sharing truth and keep people's eyes open. We just want to thank you for everything you're doing, and just keep on going.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
Thanks for watching another exciting episode of Patriots with Grit.
We want to keep you informed, so if you would, just go over to patriotswithgrit.com and give us your first name and your email so we can keep you up to date. Also, be sure to subscribe, like, and share so we can keep bringing you truth. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.